Hey, this is Mr. Marketing. Today we're talking about getting your spreadsheet right, getting your facts and your resources in order so you can go out and achieve your goals. A quick word before we do that. A lot of my videos pertain to women acting the fool, and only one so far pertains to a man acting the fool. There's a very real logistical reason behind that. So a lot of the content I go over is from TikTok or YouTube. And usually when I'm looking for content, I'll go ahead and put in keywords, things like entitled or dating or something like that. Let's take TikTok for example. So I put in the keyword entitled. And from the list here, we do have some that are from men, though the majority of them are speaking about entitled women. However, after crunching the numbers, it's a ratio between 20 male uploaders to 87 female uploaders. That is almost a ratio of 1 to 4. Now, I'm not going to dive into the waters of why this is. The simple fact of the matter is that on social media, there's a lot more videos of women acting the fool than men. Now, don't get it twisted. Men can act the fool just as well as women can. But I'm not going to artificially slant this and make it seem like there's just as many videos of men acting the fool as there are women. But it has nothing to do with disliking any one gender over the other.
There is no bigotry here. Here you are all equally worthless.
I just go over the videos that I have in front of me. Speaking of women acting the fool, we have our influencer RD Coach Jen, and she's going to lay it down for us on what it does not look like to have your facts and resources in order. Here we go.
We'll say abortion is healthcare. Hi, I'm Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Welcome to my new series, Things I Learned from My Feminist Mother. Part 1, Abortion is Healthcare. Before I was born, my mother had 2 pregnancies. One of those pregnancies resulted in the life of my older brother, while the other pregnancy, sadly, resulted in a miscarriage. That miscarriage took place in her 2nd trimester, or after the 12-week mark. When a miscarriage takes place at this point in a pregnancy, it is not uncommon that the female body struggles to dispel the fetus. When this happens, it becomes medically necessary to seek out a procedure known as a D&C. By medical definition, a D&C is an abortion procedure. And this is true whether or not the fetus is unalived.
Okay, so 2 things. 1, Jen's muddying the waters on what healthcare means. According to the Guttmacher Institute, at best, only 15% of abortions have anything to do with the medical welfare of the woman. The other 85% is for convenience purposes, not being ready to raise a child, not wanting people to find out that you've been pregnant, so on and so forth. That's like saying that amphetamines are healthcare. They can be part of healthcare, and it can be used for treating ADHD, but just ingesting an amphetamine does not necessarily mean you're doing it for healthcare purposes. And given the numbers, the vast majority of abortions ain't got nothing to do with medical welfare.
Without performing this procedure, my mother would have been at a risk of infection that could have ended her life. If that situation ended my mother's life, I wouldn't be here today.
Jen, spare me the sob story and get to the facts, please. Now, the D&C that she was referring to is dilation and curettage. And the whole point of a D&C is to dilate the cervix so you can remove unwanted matter from the uterus. But the vast majority of the time, a D&C is required for after a miscarriage or after an abortion has taken place. All this is her hoping that if she projects medical terminology with enough confidence that you won't dig into it and you won't figure out what she's actually saying. I'm already really not digging the dishonesty at this point.
And it would have left my brother in the care of my alcoholic father, who, quite frankly, was really incompetent.
Here's what really bothers me about all this is the absolute lack of detail. Unfortunately, her mother had to go through a miscarriage, and that is a horrible thing to go through. But we have absolutely no idea what's going on here. We don't know if the fetus is already terminated. We don't know the state of the fetus before the D&C took place. We don't know if the fetus was decomposing, which could have easily led to sepsis. We know nothing. All we know is that she had a miscarriage, and a D&C was performed, and nothing else.
And that would have risked both of their lives. This means that because my mother had access to abortion care in the 1980s, that procedure saved 4 people's lives that day. This is what people mean when they say abortion is healthcare.
The first part to getting your spreadsheet right is having clear and concise facts and resources. I had to explain what a D&C was. I had to explain the difference on a medically necessary abortion versus a convenience-based abortion. I had to explain all these things because I had my facts together. You just get kind of a deceptive look over of her situation, her mom's situation, and some facts about abortion. And here's why this matters. If she's preaching to the choir, they're not gonna care. All they're gonna care about is that she said something that they liked. That's it. But if you're trying to convince someone else that does not believe in the way you do, you gotta come to them clear with facts and figures. And sob stories are losing their effectiveness because everybody got one. So while I'm glad that neither her nor her brother was left in the care of an alcoholic father, that doesn't automatically mean I'm just gonna buy whatever the hell she's saying.
Did y'all know that millennial women are only the first generation of women that will have complete and total agency over their financial means in the same way that men do? Money gives you choices. If you're a millennial, I want you to take a moment and think about the year that your parents were born. My parents were born in 1952, both of them. At that point in time, women were not allowed to have bank accounts or access to credit. Women started getting bank accounts in the 1960s, but they were not allowed to have credit until 1974. By 1974, most of Gen X had already been born. This means that millennial women are the first generation of women that will have the same opportunity to bank accounts and credit cards that men do.
Okay, so this is all one big definitions game. How do you want to define millennial? I'm going by Merriam-Webster's definition of being born anywhere from 1980s to 1990s. Let's also not forget that you gotta be 18 years old to open up a checking account whether you're a man or a woman. Which means that if you're a woman born around 1942, by the time you hit 18, you can open up a checking account. So no, millennial women are not the first women that could take charge of their financial well-being. Oh, and real quick, about the whole women being able to get credit around the 1970s, she's referring to the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974. And what that act passed is that you could not be discriminated against based on your gender when it comes to credit. And all that did was legislate out discrimination if you were a woman utilizing credit. So just because a bank could refuse to give a woman credit before 1974 does not mean they always did. And since you gotta be at least 18 years or older to open up your own credit card here in the States, that means if you were born on or after 1956, by the time you're old to get a credit card, you were good!
Throughout the entirety of their lives. This is why our generation faces questions like, who should pay for dates? Because back then, in the generations before us, it wasn't even an option for women to pay. How should our bills be split? And who should be responsible for the housework? All of these questions are commonly debated in relationships and throughout the dating industry. So when we look to our parents for advice, they can't give it to us because they literally lived in a different world than we did. This is also why they gave us such bad advice when it came to student loans. Credit scores didn't even become a thing until 1989, something they've never had to deal with.
Okay, here's where I can tell she doesn't get outside of her echo chamber very often. As someone that has worked with plenty of clients, both around my age and older, my generation is not the first generation to have these questions. Like, does she really think everybody born before her was living in the dark ages? Then until millennial women arrived that equality was not possible, the previous generation, according to her, has no advice to offer her. She does comprehend that the previous generation is what built the equality she's using now, right? Like if my Xbox breaks, I want to send it to Xbox, the people who are in charge of making those things, to know how to fix it. But no, everybody born before her is too deprived of equality to give her any realistic advice. And considering that she's saying something like that, she's probably one of those people that you can't tell anything to because she just believes she's right.
And for those of you who follow Dave Ramsey, he was already a millionaire at that point. This is why he gives the advice to ignore credit scores, because he had the luxury of doing so. Roe v. Wade was ruled upon and put in place before.
Okay, FICO credit score came out in 1989. But credit scores existed way before that. Matter of fact, the Mercantile Company in 1841 was one of the first practical credit agencies. Here's where this is getting unnerving. She didn't do her research, she didn't dig into the history, she just went onto Google real quick and typed in, when did credit scores start? And then went from there. Doing research means actually looking at the history for what it is, not just finding things that support what you already believe. So if you actually watch Dave Ramsey's content, he tries to encourage viewers to not utilize credit if they don't have to. Now, if you have to, I get it. But considering that America is swimming in $16 trillion of consumer debt, most people cannot be responsible with it. Because really, do you need student loan debt to get a job? No, there's trade schools, there's military experience, there's a lot of avenues for education for the type of jobs you want. Do you need a loan for a car? Probably not. You don't have to get a brand new car or a nice used car. If you can't afford it, get a cheaper $2,000 car or a cheaper $4,000 car and then work your way up from there. Because the thing a lot of people miss out on is that credit is not free. You are paying back the full amount with interest. And that is the basis for what Dave Ramsey is saying. He's not just some out-of-touch boomer that doesn't get it and just tells youngsters to not use credit.
The Equal Credit Opportunity Act was. If they can overturn Roe, can they overturn this too?
No, under the 19th Amendment, the Supreme Court would never uphold overturning the Equal Opportunity Credit Act. And from a corporate standpoint, corporate wants male money and female money, so they're definitely not letting that happen.
Both my mother and my grandmother were adamant that from a young age I have my own money to access it and choose what I wanted to do with it. They both warned me that if I ever got married, that I should still keep my own separate accounts. And this is because they didn't. They got into situations of a domestic abuse that they couldn't escape. Our generation can. They both warned me that if I ever got married, that I should still keep my own separate account.
Emphasis on if she ever got married, and considering the amount of videos she's made about dying alone or okay to be single, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Just don't be wrong, if you're happy being single, be happy being single. Nothing wrong with it. Could she be single because she's a little too headstrong and doesn't care about facts?
And this is because they didn't. They got into situations of a domestic abuse that they couldn't escape. Our generation can. Study up on personal finance, ladies. It could save your life.
You hear that? If you were born before 1980, you were in the Stone Ages. You couldn't escape domestic abuse, women back then couldn't have any of their own money, just slaves to the patriarchy. So here's point number 2 of getting your spreadsheet right. Do not cherry pick your facts and figures. Because if you'll notice, for all the points she made, I had to come up behind her and explain everything that happened in context. Cognitive dissonance and bias is a real thing. It is very natural to want to find evidence that supports your currently existing beliefs. But the problem runs into that reality don't care about what you want to be true. And taken from the previous point, this works fine if she's just preaching to the choir. But if she's hoping to convince or educate people that are not already in line with what she currently believes, there's an incredibly solid chance of all this falling completely flat. Unless she doesn't care about educating other people and just cares about affirming what she already believes. Nah, that couldn't happen.
In the video where this comment was left, I said that women are conditioned to believe that we are not enough. I did not say that women are conditioned to not be enough. Women, as well as all humans, are inherently enough.
So just to confirm, a rapist is enough because him being a human being makes him inherently enough. This is one of the core tenets of the channel. You are not a special princess or prince. You don't just show up and get a participation trophy. Who you are as a person is primarily dependent on your merits. And if you suck as a person, man or woman, you just suck. And you know what the antidote is to sucking in life? Get good.
But tell me if you've heard any phrases like this before. You're too skinny. You're too fat. You're too tall. You're too short. You're too much. Your boobs are too small. Your boobs are too saggy. Your hair is too short. Why aren't your nails done? You don't even need makeup anyways. And then on the day you don't wear makeup, are you sick? Are you feeling tired today? You better be willing to pay half the bills and raise the children and clean the house and cook for me. And if all of that exhausts you, you should still want to have sex all the time.
Lord. This is stuff you should have learned in middle school, but here I am re-explaining all this. Not everyone in life is going to like you, and that's okay. If you are too fat to the point of being obese and unhealthy, drop the weight. If you're too skinny to the point of being anorexic and unhealthy, get some weight. If you're short, not a whole lot you can do about that. Same thing goes for being too tall. Hair? What? Do you like your hair? Does your workplace accept your hair? It does? Cool, then who cares? But what she's talking about is from another person's perspective. Everyone should be in love with how everybody is, unless you don't agree with her. There's such a thing as preferences. It's okay to like tall guys. It's okay to like short women, and vice versa. Why? Just because you may not be someone's cup of tea does not mean you may not be someone else's cup of tea. Not everyone has to like you. Get over it. It's not that big a deal. I'm gonna have to cut this down because if I let it, this could be material for a whole new video. But simply put, no one programs you to do anything. If it's beneficial for you and other people, do that shit. If it's not beneficial for you and other people, don't do that shit. Have some agency and accountability so that if you do run across an asshole guy that demands you have to pay half the bills and take care of the children and still look great and still be an nymphomaniac, find someone who's not like that. Candidly, that's offensive to men. Most men don't have those demands. But here's what this really boils down to. She's coming from the angle that, oh, since I can't meet these ridiculous standards, I shouldn't have to meet standards at all. All of my behavior's okay because society's standards are just that out of reach. No, dude. Meet the standards of reasonable people and ignore the standards of unreasonable people.
So as not to tempt the urges of men and boys.
We live in the era of Me Too. Miss me with that bullshit.
No matter how a man treats you. A good wife is a submissive wife. A good mom puts her kids first. It's important that she speak her mind, but also she can't be bossy or bitchy at the same time. And she better not ever act like she's hurt by anything, because that's too emotional. And women are not allowed to be emotional or angry, only happy-go-lucky and carefree. And there's something wrong with her if she's stressed. It's probably her mental health. Because when she was little, somebody told her not to throw like a girl. Yeah, that must be it. The standards are impossible to meet. And every man has a different set of standards and expectations based on his personal upbringing.
Called it. So taking a step back and looking at this from a marketing perspective, if you didn't already share her reviews, were you convinced? No, you were not. And that's why marketing is important, because there's a lot more to life than just you. There's also other people and being able to present things in a way that they are able to understand and accept them. The best part of all this is I don't even have to give a corporate example. Look at this from the lens of sales. She's trying to get you to buy into an ideology, a way of thinking. You see how all over the place she was, how her facts and figures were incomplete at best? From a sales point of view, she was a mess. So within reason and within human ability, if you're gonna go do anything, marketing, sales, try and present yourself on a date, anything, don't be lazy, do your research, and come at it correct, or don't come at it at all. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Mr. Marketing. See you next time.